fantasy.
Whether it's art or not, I think is a nearly philosophical debate. You know, it can't create something based on a human experience. So I don't know if it meets the definition of art. I think it offers, I think actors at the moment, I think there's huge strikes on at the moment. Yeah, a huge part of that is that it can be used to create, to create a product without human labour.
Siobhan, it's a very interesting sort of idea that artists and musicians, I suppose specifically in this case, could go on strike if AI and producers continue to use AI to create what is music. Would you be out on the picket lines? Would you be manning the barricades with Hosier there?
Yeah, I think he's quite right to make a stand on this. I think that there are parallels with the strikes that we've seen amongst writers and actors in Hollywood as well. And I mean, I'm a big fan of technology enriching our lives, but we also do need to be very careful about it. And already we've got an issue where big companies that seem to manage to capture the value of what artists do and keep it for themselves far more than the artists themselves. And so when I buy music or when I listen to music, I want any finance going to the actual artists themselves rather than to the record company. I think he has to do this.
Are we past that point at this stage, do you think? Because it seems to have happened very quickly in the last few months, but we're at a stage now, it seems, where a lot of the art that's created that's AI just seems to be looking the absolute same as if a human being made it. Are we past this watershed moment?
Not quite, no. I think that it's still got a fair way to go. I think a lot of it is still a bit rubbish, to be honest, and I don't think that Hosier needs to fear it yet. But I think that we're right to prepare the ground for it now. And I also think it's quite savvy for somebody like Hosier, who's quite a thoughtful fellow, to position himself as talking about this. I would hope that I wouldn't go out and buy an AI album, but I'm not sure if I would know that the music I was listening to was AI or not.
Is there anything intrinsically wrong with going out and buying an album that was made by AI? If you enjoy listening to it, what's the problem?
Well, I always think of ABBA Voyage, which is a big show on in London just now, which is so popular. And for anyone that's not aware, it's basically ABBA as they were in 1970. They got the real members of ABBA, who are now in their 60s or whatever it is, to wear that kind of golem technology to track their movement and do a live show, but then use AI to put them back in time. And so you go to this huge designed space, thousands of you, and it's like you're seeing ABBA in their absolute prime. It sounds amazing, looks amazing. I've got friends that are going now for the third time, 100 quid a crack. Now that is a kind of an interesting hybrid. So it's still the artists themselves, but it is the spectacle people will pay to see.
That's the enhancing or the enriching, isn't it?
And I love the music of Bob Dylan, but it does sometimes break my heart how bad the production of his tracks are. Especially some of the stuff from the 70s and 80s, like sounds bad. He sold all the rights to his music for 300 million quid a few years ago. I wouldn't at all be against me being able to get on Spotify Bob Dylan's albums reworked with AI to my tastes. So just funk it up a bit, or just like make it remove his harmonica at times. Like I'd be so relaxed about that. And I think that what we are, like you say, we've got beyond that point. I think we're at the Napster end of AI, where yes, the big the pirates have stolen all this data that creators have been making over the last years and are using it to advantage themselves. We'll catch up in 10 or 15 years' time, and I think by then you'll see a radically different creative world emerge. And I'm interested to see the forms that takes. But for the moment, I think the creative sector in Scotland is in such a perilous state, and it's nothing to do with AI. So I think we've got real problems here and now that are nothing to do with it.
I really enjoyed you explaining ABBA Voyage to Nick Sheridan, who could not be a bigger fan of ABBA Voyage.
Is that right? My life, yeah. There you go.
Kellen, is this just the natural progression as to what we've been seeing in the music industry already? For example, back in the day, if there was an orchestral section in a song that would be performed by an orchestra. Nowadays, some musicians would get away with having it done by a keyboard that can just make the sounds of violins and can make the sounds of percussion. Is this just now something that is going to happen now that technology is taking over everything? By the sounds of it, is that just inevitable what's to happen? It could keep costs down and you can create different music with not that much more effort.
I think it definitely has a part to play. I mean, we're about to see the first original Beatles track in, well, certainly in my lifetime, and I suspect for a long time before that. Although I think there's something slightly unsettling to me about the thought of listening to an album with no human input. I think its involvement should be to enrich the work of current artists rather than to replace them. I think it also raises interesting questions about as automation becomes a bigger part of society. Now, how do we tax that, and how do we replace the jobs that are lost? And these are big questions. I'm glad that Hodge is bringing them up. And I must say that my sister will be absolutely heartbroken if he were to go on strike. So if you're listening, keep going.
I mean, the first one, it always comes back to this idea that if you listen to a piece of music, obviously it's so derivative anyway, because the artist who has made it likes particular other artists, so they're just bringing together lots of other art and stuff that they enjoy and putting it into a song. Isn't AI doing the exact same thing? It's a curation of stuff that's gone before. Isn't that what everything is?
I think it's similar, but I don't think it's exactly the same. But I think you're right to raise the issues about influences, as we've seen in the court cases about Ed Sheeran's work recently, for example, and how those were created. To what degree was it just influences in his head, or was it direct plagiarism? I think that the way that we create, whether that is music, film, art, changes all the time, and we use the tools that we have to our advantage. So I'm not against AI technology at all. I just think that the geek in me thinks we must regulate this. We must think about it properly and create a framework which works for everybody.
Love a framework. Thank you, Pam.
Now, an appeal is being made to recover 2 toy rabbits with huge sentimental value, which were accidentally donated to a charity shop in Orkney. Muppy and Ranger were given to Rory Miller 12 years ago by his dad Archie, who died last year.
Yes, they were handed into the Blue Door in Kirkma in error last week and were then sold. Mr. Miller's widow hopes to get them back so that her son can one day pass them on to his own kids. And it got us thinking about long-lost or donated childhood mementos that we would give anything to have another go on.
Yes, Kellen, we'll come to you first on this one. Is there anything from your childhood that you lost, that you maybe misplaced, that was taken away from you, and you think, I would have loved to have still had that?
Nothing springs to mind. I have a bear called Bear that was a gift from my late uncle before he passed, and I can sort of empathise with their situation, and the thought of losing that is totally heartbreaking. So I can't imagine what they're going through.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing, isn't it? I mean, in particular those specific items that are linked to somebody maybe might have passed away. It's such a link to the person who's gone, isn't it? It's a hugely emotional thing.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, I'm quite lucky that I've not lost anything with that level of sentimental value. But I mean, yeah, to think that these people I have a friend that lost a necklace from a late father, for example. Absolutely heartbreaking. And it would be great to see the Teddies reunited with their rightful owner.
Yeah.
Who named Bear, by the way? Was Bear called Bear before you got Bear, or did you name Bear?
I think it was just a name. I just knew.
Yeah.
That was his name.
Yeah,
So funny. This guy tells me that since he's moved to Scotland, he's become a Rangers fan. I think it was in you before. This guy loved it.
Indeed. Siobhan, what about you? Did you have any sort of sentimental teddies or toys that maybe you still own, you still have?
I've been on a massive clutter clearing binge. I'm one that I try not to associate objects with emotions. I'm quite happy to get rid of stuff. But I think it's quite interesting the way that what kids latch onto. It's not necessarily the toys. It's like, oh, this was given to you by your great aunt, or so and so knitted this for you. It's really important. You must love this toy. Quite often, it's the ones that are a bit funny looking and they'll get some strange texture or whatever, and they'll just latch onto it, and that'll become, like the Velveteen Rabbit, you'll become this much loved toy. And yeah, we can't tell what it is that we will really, really love. But I've probably protected objects belonging to my son more than I have to myself. Perhaps because they mean something more to me.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's like, oh, I remember the child that that really loved that, and well, he's sitting there going, what? I don't remember that.
What about yourself, Alistair? Anything from your childhood that you'd love to get back or that you do have still?
No, I'm flinty-hearted like my colleagues here. I just don't care about stuff like that. My mum's a bit of a Buddhist, so she would never encourage investing objects with emotion. Like, it's all about the memories themselves they can bring back. But when you brought that up, I was thinking about, I've not seen my wee Kane doll in a long time. I was really in the WWF when I was wee, and I had like a replica Kane that was class. I wouldn't mind seeing that wee guy again.
Go to the actual box in your home and dig him out.
I might do it.
Alright, we will leave it there. Well, it is, of course, that time of the week when minds turn to the week ahead. So we're going to ask the panel, what do they think we'll be talking about over the next 7 days? Alistair, apart from unearthing your Kane doll and playing with it non-stop up in the attic, what do you think we'll be talking about in the next 7 days?
Well, I'm really interested to see if this World Cup, the Women's World Cup in New Zealand, Australia, has an impact on attendances in Scotland. That's something I'll be looking at, because I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a bit of a boom in television viewing figures, because there's more televised games than ever, and actually people clicking through the turnstiles.
And that an increased audience that you would imagine would have a concrete influence on sponsorship and on investment.
Well, yeah, sponsorship's going through the roof in Scottish women's football already, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see just things just kicking up another gear. And that's certainly something I'd love to see.
Excellent, right. What do you think, Callum? What do you think we'll be talking about over the next 7 days? Anything on your news radar?
I think football fever's in full swing. For me, I'll be looking at the Saudi Pro League and the sports washing that's going on there. And I think it's about time that Europe responded to that in some way.
Tell us about that. What's going on?
Well, Cristiano Ronaldo moved in January. He's paid £175 million a season, and in the last couple of months we've seen the biggest stars in the world move to Saudi Arabia to build what they claim is going to be one of the biggest football leagues in the world. It's clear that it's politically motivated. It's an attempt to, it's sport washing. It's an attempt to make the Saudi regime more palatable to people in the West. And I think that the European leagues should get together and should do something to protect what we've got, because the football heritage in Europe is really valuable, and to see that sort of disappear and become a front for the Saudi regime it would be sad to see.
Is that a young Tory advocating for Britain and Europe joining together to work in concert on the global stage?
It's a one-off thing that you said.
Never to be heard again. Siobhan, I know that you love your football. Are you going to...
Well, I'm going to contrast what the guys are saying. Like, it's August. I'm an Edinburgh resident. I think the world is all about culture. I think that Edinburgh will create more controversies. It will create more joy, more creativity. I think Edinburgh in August is a brilliant place. There is so much to see, and I am not one of those Edinburghers who resents the crowds on the pavement.
Every person I've ever met that likes being in Edinburgh during the Edinburgh Festival.
The world comes to me. It's fantastic, and the world revolves around Edinburgh in August. I'll have none of this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Right, well, that's from 7 days for another week. Another week's gone by so quickly.
If you can believe it.
If you can believe it. A big thank you to our panel. Siobhan Mathers, we have Alistair Heather, and we have Kellen Hadfield as well. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Don't forget, you can now find the programme in loads of places. You can find it on BBC Scotland, BBC Radio Scotland. You can find it on BBC iPlayer and on the BBC Sound app as well. From everyone on the team, enjoy the next 7 days, and we'll be in all those places from 11 p.m. next Sunday. From everyone, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It saves the whole interest to be in hospital.
Now that's a damning view that you have as a consulting paediatrician. You're saying that the government are wanting to be seen to do something rather than wanting. Why on earth? How on earth could it be possible that any government would not want to protect as many babies as possible? Surely they want to do as much as they can here.
No, I mean, you'll hear the weasel words over the next few weeks or months, I have no doubt. The government has made many changes that has made it easier for errors to be hidden. Community councils were closed, were shut down a few years ago. Then the government removed legal aid for families who thought that their loved one had experienced unsatisfactory care. They created the NHS Litigation Authority or NHS Litigation, so they can pass any problem on to them. But I think the key decision they have made is that they have allowed NHS managers to have complete control over how hospitals work. And remember, I have been involved in dealing with clinical negligence cases for over 30 years.
Dr. Evans, thank you very much indeed, sir. Thank you. And you can find help, advice and support on the BBC Action Line website, bbc.co.uk/actionline. The Midnight News is coming up right now.
The voice of the UK. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
With the BBC News at midnight, this is Jason Kay. Lucy Letby, the nurse convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill another 6 at the Countess of Chester Hospital, will be sentenced in the morning. Letby has indicated she won't attend the hearing at Manchester Crown Court, where some of the parents of the babies will read out impact statements. Ian Aitchison is a former prison governor, and he says that convicted criminals like Letby should be forced into the courtroom by the judges.
You can't control how people are going to act, and that ought to be down to the individual circumstances of the case. But the judge ought to be the person in the driving seat to say, if necessary, this person must be taken by force from where they are, to compel them to come to the court to be sentenced in front of the people that they've harmed.
The England women's football captain Millie Bright has said England gave everything to the World Cup final and they're absolutely heartbroken after losing 1-0 to Spain. King Charles said the Lionesses had paved the way for generations to come. Rishi Sunak, Sir Keir Starmer and Sir Ed Davey also praised the team's efforts in the tournament. The England head coach, Serena Wiegman, said the Lionesses should be proud of themselves.
The team gave everything during every game, in every training session, and we just gave our very best today, and that was not enough to win, but I'm so proud of what they've done, and we definitely have shown who we are, who we want to be, and what great team and people we are.
The captain of Spain's football team, who scored her country's winning goal, was told after the game that her father had died. Olga Carmona's father had been fighting a long illness and died on Friday. Surrey County Council has confirmed that the 10-year-old girl found dead in Woking last week was known to them. The body of Sarah Sharif was discovered after her father contacted police after he took a flight from the UK to Pakistan. Police in the country are looking for him, his partner and his brother. A major tropical storm has brought high winds and heavy rains to western Mexico's Baja California region. Torrential downpours from Tropical Storm Hilary, which has been downgraded from a hurricane, submerged houses in one town. Across the border in Southern California, residents are preparing for the storm's arrival. The mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, told a news conference the city was ready to tackle the storm.
Our message today is clear. Stay safe, stay home, and stay informed. This is an unprecedented weather event, but Los Angeles has deep experience responding to crisis. Whether it be wildfire or earthquakes, the city is prepared.
John Lewis and Waitrose are offering free hot drinks to police officers. The John Lewis partnership, which owns both brands, said it believed the initiative would help to deter shoplifters. In the weather, clear skies for most, but showers will linger overnight across western Scotland, where it'll also be quite windy. And that's the BBC News at 3 minutes past midnight.
Football is so much more than what happens on the pitch. That is absolutely sensational! That's right, the summer transfer window is wide open and the rumour mill is well and truly working overtime.
The Transfer Gossip Daily Podcast with Maisie Adam.
Who will your team buy, sell, loan, or even just be heavily linked with, only to lose out to your league rival?
What will happen next?
Every weekday throughout August, I'll be joined by the Daily Telegraph, Luke Hedgewood and others to dissect the most tantalising transfer rumours from around the world.
The Transfer Justice Daily Podcast.
Listen on BBC Sound.
Stephen Nolan on BBC Radio 5 Live.
Tonight on the programme we've heard as serial baby murderer Lucy Letby is about to be sentenced for killing 7 babies and trying to murder 6 more. There is concern over the government's plans for a non-statutory inquiry which will not force people to give evidence. Dr. Joy Evans is a consultant paediatrician who helped police bring the nurse to justice.
Simply makes me think that they want to be seen to be doing something rather than actually wanting to do something that would make a significant change and make it safer for patients to be in hospital.
England's Lionesses remain the pride of the country despite their heartbreaking 1-0 defeat to Spain in the World Cup final. But many of us would love to be in the shoes of Spanish fans like Semra Hunter.
There were thousands of people, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who were out and about. They were so euphoric whenever that goal went in. They were obviously even more so afterwards. Plenty of tears of joy and hugs and jubilation. And I think just pride overall that Spain won again.
There's a lot to build on.
What was happening is just a massive shift in the public consciousness towards understanding that women and girls do belong in sport and they belong in football, and what we were thinking of banning them all those years ago. And, why aren't we making sure that we're not stereotyping our kids anymore, that we're giving equal provision at school? That's what's happening. It's a really big moment.
Some of the headlines tomorrow, the Daily Mail, their front page tomorrow, Make Card Letby's Faces, The Guardian, Pride and Pain, the Daily Express, Pride of Nation. Here's how to get in touch.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live. Call free 08085 909 693. Text 85058. Text will be charged at your standard message rate. Plus, see our privacy notice, bbc.co.uk/5 Live. Stephen Nolan on BBC Radio 5 Live.
Let's head over to the United States where a Category 4 storm is happening. There are warnings for catastrophic flooding as Tropical Storm Hilary nears Mexico and California. The LA County Supervisor, Janice Hahn, warned residents of the area to be ready.
They're talking about winds up to 145 miles an hour hitting Los Angeles County. It's been 84 years since one came ashore, so it's a once-in-a-lifetime. This really is an all-hands-on-deck effort.
My radar meteorologist Matthew Capucci is in California now. Matthew, explain what's happening where you are.
Yeah, so right now it's not so much a wind event here in Southern California where I am. It's more about the heavy rainfall they're getting. Keep in mind that this area really doesn't see that much rainfall to begin with each year, and so when you factor in how much rain is coming down and how quickly it's coming down, you see big-time issues. Consider a place like, Death Valley, California, the desert, for example. They see about 4.78 centimeters worth of rain every year. We could see 5 to 7 centimeters just in the next day and a half before all is said and done. So very impressive stuff. Most places seeing about 6 months to a year's worth of rain with just this setup. Things will wind down later on tonight into early tomorrow morning, but until then, much of California, much of the Inland Empire and desert seeing a pretty good rainfall and some high-impact flooding.
And how are people coping with the flooding?
Well, we've seen a lot of businesses shutting down early. I'm actually at a restaurant right now that will be shutting down in the next hour or so as more heavy rains arrive. I think, for the most part, though, it's a weekend, so school's not in session. Businesses, for the most part, have shuttered as well, so I think people are taking it seriously. One thing we always worry about in events like this, though, is when people base their decision-making on past experience. Every weather event is inherently different, and so if you have an event that is unlike something that people have faced before, they may not be making the best decisions. That's why it's imperative people listen to the officials, listen to meteorologists, do what they're supposed to do, and ultimately make sure they're not in a vulnerable position, particularly as floodwaters rise to places they perhaps haven't before.
And what does Category 4 in terms of a storm, what does that mean?
Well, it's no longer even a hurricane. Category 4 it refers to the Saffir-Simpson scale, which rates hurricanes 1 through 5 based on only wind speed. Meteorologists are vehemently opposed to that scale simply because it doesn't take into account storm surge, the ocean waters that are pushed ashore causing coastal flooding, or heavy rainfall, which is far deadlier than wind. Wind is easy to move inland from, but surge is tougher to escape, and freshwater flooding is much more pervasive, both in terms of severity and geographic aerial coverage. And so with this, sure, it's not a hurricane. Sure, it might not be grabbing those headlines the way Category 4 would, but the flood risk is very real, very significant, especially for an area that doesn't deal with it all that often. So, yeah, Category 4, it was a Cat 4 over the open ocean. Other than Nemo and Dory, it didn't affect too many folks out there. Right now, it's a big flood issue now.
Thank you very much indeed, Matthew. KJ Matthews, journalist who's in Los Angeles. KJ, where there's a 5.1 magnitude earthquake has just hit.
Oh my, we're getting all of it. Can you believe that today? All of it within 24 hours. Yes, I thought that we only had to worry about the tropical storm, and the flooding and just making sure that we're not in areas where there could be a possible mudslide. And then I get this alert on my phone about, I want to say an hour and maybe 25 minutes ago that said there was a 5.1 magnitude earthquake happening near the town of Ojai. Now, Ojai is about 85 miles west of Los Angeles, which is about 128 kilometers west, in Ventura County, which is the county west of Los Angeles County. And so far, thank God, there have been no injuries and no real significant structural damage being reported. I think there was a college, they said they thought some structural damage had happened to that. But so far, no real injuries. But how bizarre, to be hunkered down, as I am, like many other millions of Southern Californians here, in their home, waiting for the storm to pass, and then we all get this alert across our phone saying that we had a 5.1 earthquake. So, very interesting right now.
Make that relative for me. A 5.1 magnitude earthquake. How big or small is that? What's that mean?
It's actually pretty big. It's not as big as like a 6.1 or anything like that. But it's pretty significant. I mean, definitely if you're in Ventura County, you would have felt it for sure. Even if there was no damage, it would have been, shaking for sure. I don't know how many minutes it lasted, but it's not something that is not felt. For sure, if you're in Ventura County, even if you're not in the town of Ojai, you would have felt it. And probably is weird because you're hunkered down in your home, waiting for the storm to pass, and then you feel a shaking. You don't know what's worse. So, yeah, it's a little bit scary. I don't think we've experienced anything like this in a while. But you know what's very interesting? In the midst of all this, two things are still open. We've got Disneyland open, and we still have a major football game going on at SoFi Stadium, which is where the Super Bowl took place earlier this year. So, yeah, some people still are brave enough to get out and about and go to various functions on this Sunday. But I think most people are just trying to stay in and make sure that they don't get caught in a flooded intersection. And there have been quite a few, from as far as Palm Springs all the way to our Southern California San Fernando Valley near Universal Studios. So it really just depends on where you are.
KJ, thank you very much indeed. Always good to talk to you. Right, let's get into the papers. Benedict Spence, the journalist, is with us. Chief reporter columnist at the Herald, Katrina Stewart. Hello, Benedict.
Good evening, Stephen.
Evening. Katrina, good evening to you. Hello.
Hello.
Okay. Oh, there you are. Can you hear me? No, she can't. We'll see if we can come back to her. Benedict, it's you and I alone. We've got to start with a Lepby story, don't we? It's Times, it's the Telegraph. The Telegraph, Lepby can be forced to face families in court. Lucy Lepby can be forced to appear in court and face the victims of her crimes when she's sentenced today. The government has said, a source told the Telegraph, prison officers may use lawful enforcement to ensure that the child killer cannot remain in their cell when the judge hands down his sentence. So the Telegraph tomorrow handling this story. We've been talking about tonight, others talking about Lepby doesn't want to go in and be sentenced. She wants to stay in her cell. Should she be dragged in, kicking and screaming, Benedict, or not?
I mean, I don't think it will come to that, being dragged in, kicking and screaming. Perhaps that might happen, but I don't think that would give the impression of somebody who's particularly innocent in any of this. If she's still clinging to this, I assume that she still is, if she's pled not guilty beforehand. I think we have to sort of be a bit measured about this. Actually, you know, this is a country that's come a long way in how we treat criminals. You know, we don't have cruel or unusual punishments. We've got rid of the death penalty. Actually, I think we treat people who are facing conviction and those who have been convicted fairly well. Not perhaps as well as they could be, but we've made a lot of progress and we do it fairly well. This, I think, is a lot more for the victims and the families of the victims, actually, that somebody who is going to be sentenced, who has been found guilty, should be made to face those people one last time in court, because this is about justice. It's not just about punishing the individual, it is about justice. And I don't think that the families of those affected are ever really going to get true justice. It's impossible to get true justice in this kind of situation. But should they wish it, I think that they have that right to be able to face Lucy Letby or see her in court as she is sentenced. And I don't actually think that using a measure of force to bring her to court is unfair. You know, there are lots of crimes that are actually quite minor ones that perhaps it's not entirely necessary to have the person in court. One of the things that needs bearing in mind is it is actually surprisingly expensive to get somebody to court and back again from their cell. It used to be about 500 quid per prisoner, I think, that they used to pay for that. So for some crimes, perhaps it's not essential, but for a high-profile one as this, that has affected quite as many people to such an awful degree, I think it's only right, really, that the individual should face the judge when they're being sentenced.
Katrina, I was speaking to... are you there, Katrina, by the way? Good evening to you.
Good evening. I can hear you, Stephen. I don't know why you can't hear me.
I thought I'd make sure you were rather than ask a question to the ether. So thanks for joining us. I was talking to an expert earlier who was saying, look, let's say that Letby is dragged kicking and screaming into the court. What do we then do if, for example, she didn't stay quiet, she refused to pay respect to the court or the judge? This is maybe why this is more of a nuanced debate than drag her in.
I think one of the things that makes this more of a nuanced debate is the fact that these discussions are being made in quite extreme circumstances. You know, they're against the backdrop of very, very difficult cases. So there's a discussion around the behaviour of Thomas Cashman, who was the killer of Olivia Pratt-Corbell. He also declined to be in court when he was sentenced in April. So because these are such extreme cases, it's really hard to take emotion out of it and look at it in quite a kind of clinical way. And I think one of the frustrations is that this is something that's been discussed quite a lot. You know, Dominic Raab had previously tweeted that he would ensure that those who are convicted of crimes would be compelled to attend court. It's something that the Prime Minister has talked about, but Rishi Sunak hasn't ever committed to a timescale on when legislation around that might be brought forward. But I think Lucy Letby's behaviour in the court shouldn't be too much of a worry, because judges are competent in dealing with accused when they appear in court. And you would have to hope that the judge would be able to handle her behaviour, and if she had to appear and then be taken out again, so be it.
What difference does it make whether she's in court or not, if she gets the same sentence?
The difference, I think, as Benedict says, it's very much for the family members. They want to see justice being done, which, you know, there's all sorts of discussions to be had there around whether that's a reasonable reason for compelling someone to attend court, but it's not really for the purposes of justice. Justice will still be meted out in the same way, but for the families, I think, I don't think you can heal in a situation like this, the sort of process of using their experience through the court system. I think having Lucy Letby there in front of them would certainly be of some kind of comfort to them.
But she could, for example, Benedict, she could be there via video link from her cell, couldn't she? So, is there much difference?
I suppose you could, again, I think we're doing this predominantly actually for the families and them getting a sense of justice. I suppose you'd have to ask them whether or not they feel comfortable with, because it's effectively what you're doing there is you're still allowing the individual a degree of isolation. They won't feel the eyes in the room on them in the way that they would do if they were in the courtroom. So again, I think what we need to think about this, because, if we're talking about things like, the behaviour, they might kick off, they might shout and, misbehave, I don't think that we should be giving in to the bad behaviour of individuals like this. If she were posing a genuine danger, for example, that there might be an attempt to escape, or that perhaps members of the public might try to take it upon themselves to harm her, and of course, this is an incredibly emotive case. Things like that have happened, thankfully not very often in this country, but certainly in other places that is known to happen. If there were a question around safety, or potentially a member of the public committing a crime themselves, then I think you could perhaps have the argument around a video link. That perhaps would be a decent enough medium. But where possible, and I would hope that we would have good levels of security in our courts for high-profile cases like this, where possible, I think that they should be made to come to court. Again, especially actually if the families do want it. It's entirely possible that they don't, and that they want nothing to do with her, and that they don't want to see her, and that they might not even be in court. But actually, this is as much justice for them as it is justice passed on her.
The Sun tomorrow, they're leading with the Lionesses. We still think the world of you. Fans proud of the Lionesses. Did you watch it, Katrina?
I listened to it on the radio. Football is not my thing. Unfortunately, I was asked on, well, not unfortunately, to my great delight, I was invited onto Gordon Smart's show last Sunday and was asked about football, and I may as well have been naked because I know absolutely nothing about it whatsoever. But despite my strong Scottish accent,
this isn't just an event, though. When you get to the final, Shirley, it's not just for football fans, it's an event. It's about getting behind your country, is it not?
Well, indeed, and you say that, and I have been behind my country. So I support Australia because I was born and raised in Sydney. So I've been a little bit bitter about the fact that the Matildas were knocked out. So I think that's got a lot to do with it as well. But overall, it has been brilliant. It has been exciting. As a feminist, it's great for me just to see women excelling in the game and see the interest around women playing football as well. The FA banned women from the game in 1921. Saying that it was quite unsuitable for females and ought not to be encouraged. We're 100 years on and little girls are still being rubbished by their male peers for wanting to play, a boys' game, and women are still far, far less involved in the sport than men. So all the publicity around it, I think, is brilliant, even though I don't particularly enjoy the game itself.
Benedict, did you watch it?
I watched the second half. I had a meeting on a Sunday of all things. I had to then very quickly run and find a pub, so I caught the second half, but not the first. But it must be said, it was, all of the pubs in central London were absolutely heaving with people. And it was a good mix of people. I'd still say it was sort of 3/4 female, though, which is, I'd say it's a good thing in that, you don't often, sort of football, as Katrina just alluded to, football spaces are largely male-dominated even now. Most stadium, most pubs, when you're watching Premier League matches or Championship matches, it is still a very sort of male atmosphere. So I think it was quite nice, actually, for people not just to be able to engage in watching a national team in a final, but in a slightly more laid-back atmosphere. I think we all remember when England got to the final of the European Championship, and as fun as it was, we all remember sort of...
There's Benedict. FaceTime has just fallen down, but that's a good opportunity for us to remind ourselves what Pat Firth said tonight. One of England's original Lionesses scored a hat-trick in 1973 during England's women's first official home match. I put it to her that England were second best to Spain on the day.
Yeah, every time they played they did well, but they just didn't click like they have done in the past. But
They did us all proud, didn't they? You know, they went out, they fought till the very last minute. It's just a shame that Hempy's shot hit the crossbar. I think that would change things. But, you know, all credit to them, and they can come home with their heads held high.
What do you think the difference was on the pitch today between the two sides?
Possession. Spain kept possession a lot better than us. We gave away a lot of balls once we got possession. And we had our chances, you know. But it was just, I don't know, it all seemed to click for Spain today. In patches we were a little bit rusty. You know, things just didn't work out for us. Just didn't work out. You know, and Mary Oates, as usual, kept the score down, really, with two or three great saves. The firepower wasn't there today for us, I don't think, up front either. When we broke loose on the wings, there was nobody there in the centre, so we were putting crosses across, but nobody there to receive them and finish them off.
You were an inspiration, Pat, to many of those women today. How's that feel?
Oh, it feels nice. I don't think there's a word to sort of say how proud I am of them. And it's nice to think that, I was one of the first ones to actually represent England and start it all off for them, because we've all had to start somewhere. A foundation has to be built at some time. And it's really, really nice to think that I was one of the original lionesses that started the foundation for the team of today, and the players of today and the players of the future.
And what advice would you give the players? They will be going home disappointed. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's gutted, aren't they? And the players are going to be gutted for 2 or 3 weeks. They're going to be thinking, what if I'd have done this? Could we have done that better? Could we have done this better? But, you know, you've got to come home heads high. We'll always be behind you. And you've got to the World Cup final. And, you know, that's an absolutely fantastic feat, isn't it? You know, the men's not done it since 1966. So yeah, come on, keep your heads high. And we've got the Olympics next, then we've got another Euros coming up, and we've still got players in this squad that'll be included in the next World Cup. So, you know, we've had the experience of playing in a World Cup final. Let's get there next time.
Do you think they've left a legacy? And what is it?
They've definitely left a legacy. It's very difficult. I mean, the legacy I think they've left is showing girls and women and young boys that if you work hard enough, you know, when you're younger, and as you get older with more experience, you can achieve your dreams. Because a lot of the players that have played today wouldn't have believed they'd have been playing in a World Cup final. You know, so it's opened up opportunities especially for the girls coming up in the junior teams and grassroots. They're all role models now. You know, we never had role models too. You know, can I have a number 2 Lucy Bronze shirt, please? Because we didn't have anybody like that. But now, not just the girls, but I mean, we've seen men with the shirts of, you know, the England Lionesses names on the back, don't we? So, yeah, just get out there, train hard, play hard, and, you know, the rewards will come.
Lioness Pat Firth, 0808 5909 693. We are having a look through the papers tonight with Benedict and Katrina. Benedict, you're back with us, hopefully. Dominic Spence. Evening again, Benedict.
Evening. Gremlins and everybody else.
I know. And Katrina Stewart is with us as well. Let's move on to the eye. Tories tell Sunak to sack Braverman. Centrist Conservatives put Prime Minister under increasing pressure to fire the Home Secretary after repeated small post failures amid rumours she will go in an even reshuffle, Benedict.
Yeah, I mean, what we need to remember about all of this is that anybody who is made Home Secretary is done so, and they take the job knowing full well that they are becoming a human flak jacket for the Prime Minister and the government. It is their job to do the dirty work, the difficult jobs that nobody else wants to do, and that involves difficult questions around things like immigration, of course. Suella Braverman has not covered herself in glory. She's come across, I think, actually as less competent than her predecessor, Priti Patel, who did not oversee a particularly happy time at the Home Office, but at least sort of gave the impression that she at least sort of had a plan, even if there was no real chance of it ever sort of enacting it. Braverman has inherited what Patel left her and hasn't really acted upon it. Talks a tough game, but actually I think for a long time has also been seen to be being a bit on manoeuvres, trying to use the position to drum up support on the right of the party, perhaps for her own aspirations. Let's be clear, though. Her main remit was the small boats crisis in the Channel. That hasn't been addressed. The boats have not stopped. They have increased in number. There is no permanent solution for refugees, many refugees in this country. There is no real mechanism for deporting people who have no right to be here, and there is no, on the horizon at least, no speeding up of the processing of people waiting to have their asylum applications dealt with. That's one of the major issues that sort of dominates.
Yeah, but could anybody else have done any better within the Tory party? What is up for grabs there in terms of options?
Well, exactly. This is what I think would be Braverman's defence, which is that she's been handed a poisoned chalice and that it would be sort of terribly unfair on her. But I suppose, really, the Tories aren't going to care too much. They would say to her, well, you knew exactly what the remit was when you took the job on. And there is this idea also, and the Eye talks about this, although I am slightly more quizzical about this, which is that because Braverman likes to talk a good game about culture war issues, that she is perhaps a little bit more toxic. The Eye says that it has a poll that says that culture war issues are detrimental to the Tories' chances of winning the next general election. Now, I can't see what that poll is. I can't see what the methodology behind it is, so I'm not sure how accurate that is. I think it's red meat to a lot of Tory heartland voters, but nonetheless, she is a divisive figure in the same way that Patel was before her, and she's one of those that, you know, a lot of sort of Tory right-wingers will like, but right now, Rishi Sunak not looking like he is going to win the next general election, and if he is, it's not the right of the Tory party he has to win over, because they are likely to vote for him either way. It is the floating voters, it is the centre ground, and right now, it doesn't look as if this, frankly, quite right-wing, relatively, Home Secretary is winning him over many of those voters.
Katrina?
I mean, this story runs on a 4 to 6 week cycle. It's calamity after calamity and speculation over her resignation after speculation over her resignation, whether it's the flawed Rwanda plan court challenge or the savaging of the illegal immigration bill, or now the questions around the Biddy Stockholm barge. And it's an interesting appointment because Rishi Sunak had been desperate to move out from Boris Johnson's shadow and away from Johnson's populist politics. But Braverman was sort of built by Johnson. You know, he picked her from the backbenches to be Attorney General. But with Stop the Boats being so fundamental to the perceived success or otherwise of this government as one of the 5 pledges for government, there's a lot hinging on this. But as Benedict alludes to, the job of Home Secretary is such a poisoned chalice, you have to wonder who on earth else would want it.
One of the other stories you're looking at, Benedict, we're short of time tonight, so sorry for being brief. Buying a home more expensive than renting. This from the Daily Telegraph, right?
Yeah, and I mean, barely a week goes by.
Spell the story out to us.
Yeah, so I'll just read what it says in the Telegraph, and that is that buying a home has become more expensive than renting for the first time in 13 years. First-time buyers now have to pay an extra £122 a month on their mortgage that it would cost to rent. And I think that, you know, as I say, every week actually we seem to have a conversation about the difficulty in the cost of living, and of course the effect interest rates have had on things like home ownership. And it's just another one of those little things that is going to have sort of, I think, in my opinion, permanent sort of demographic changes. It is incredibly difficult difficult for people of a certain generation now to get on the housing ladder. Those who have managed it are now being hammered in a way that they could never possibly have expected. And it was one of those things, of course, that for so long was just taken as a given. As you got through life, you'd reach a certain age, you'd reach a certain salary, you'd buy your home, you'd start your family. As I say, a generation of younger people are being locked out of that, and it's not as if renting is particularly cheap as it is. So practically that much more expensive for young families, that is really difficult. And again, another thing that is going to come, I think, to harm the Tories come election time. Do people feel poorer or richer than at the start of Rishi Sunak's government? And right now it looks like they're going to be feeling poorer.
I can give you 1 minute, Katrina.
Yes, I mean, according to the story, this is despite rapidly rising rents. And the narrative is always around how difficult it is to rent, how expensive it is to rent, and then how difficult to get onto the property ladder. This story seems to be quite a small sample size. It's from BIFA, but it certainly is a concern to the Tories if people with mortgages are feeling even more pinched than people who are renting.
Okay, listen, thank you very much indeed. David Spence, thank you, sir. Katrina, thank you as well. Thank you. Night to you both. We'll have a look through the national newspapers here in the Lowlands on a Friday, Saturday and Sunday night. And thanks for being with me over the years. Now, it is 12:34.
The fireworks.
Get butterflies in your stomach. And feel goosebumps all over. The world's greatest classical music festival. The BBC Premiere. Watch on iPlayer, listen on BBC Sound.
BBC Radio 5 Live.
The voice of the UK. Stephen Nolan. Listen live. Pause, rewind and discover with the BBC Sound app.
It's one of the biggest pollutants in the environment, and you probably don't know about it. I didn't. Around a third of the microplastic pollution in the environment, around a third of it comes from 3G pitches alone, according to an EU report. Despite that, Belfast City Council put 120 tonnes of it on its pitches last year. They acknowledge environmental concerns, so should it still be happening? Is there an alternative? If a ban is looming, why are we spending money on 3G pitches? Well, we get our head around this. Green Party Belfast City Councillor Bran Smith with us today. So Bran, set this out for us.
Stephen, I want to, this is a bit of a technical argument, so I want to try and break it down for you. If there's I think a lot of this has come to late in the last few months with the Ulster Rugby application to put down the install a new 3G pitch at Ravenhill. There was a body called Shared Environmental Services, who are the independent body set up to support all 11 local Northern Irish councils when it comes to something called habitat regulation assessments and planning applications. So essentially, they look at potential issues around environmental concerns, biodiversity, etc. So a number of months ago,